Hi everyone, I'm Phoenix Wang. It's my great honor and pleasure to get a chance to present my paper here. I'm a junior student double major in philosophy and clinical psychology at the University of California, San Diego. The paper I'm going to present is the theory of adverbialism and many properties problem. I will mainly focus on improvement and limitations in possible solutions. Now let me switch to my share screen. Okay, cool. In this paper, I will argue that the adverbialism view has many limitations and defects when it confronts with many properties problem. Therefore, I will provide my version of two possible solutions in dealing with the limitations of adverbialism. To sustain my view, I will start from the refined part of adverbialist view of perception by taking the flaws of the sense-datum theory into account. In the meantime, I will also address some challenges for the adverbialist in solving the many-property problem. Lastly, I plan to touch on possible approaches to deal with the many-property problem, and most importantly, I want to assess the adverbialism view by carefully examining its limitations and potential improvement in some proposed solutions. So before I start, it's worthwhile to point out some background knowledge about the adverbialism and also about sense-datum theory. In the field of philosophy perception, the theory of adverbialism rejects the sense-datum view, considering the adverbialist disagrees with the phenomenon principle, which is proposed by sense-datum theorists. On the one hand, in the sense-datum theory, the concept of experience sheds light on act-object conception and the separation between the sensed object and mental awareness. On the other hand, the adverbial theory involves the act-object ambiguity, so it formulates the perception of an object in terms of actions. So, and in this paper, I mainly focus on color perception, and also I touch on some some perceptual events that relate to shapes. The adverbialism view rejects the act-object conception of perceptual experience, considering that it rests on the belief that there is no distinction between the mental act of sensing and the object which is sensed. Our perception of an object can be expressed by adverbs to describe how actions are performed. So let's take the perceptual experience of seeing a yellow moon as an example. In the view of adverbialism, I don't sense the object with the yellow sensible quality. So the yellow sensible quality in sense-datum theorist view, they will say that the sensible quality is the sense-datum. Instead, I sense this object in a particular way, yellowly. So if I put the adverbialism view into a more general form, it indicates that if the subject has a visual experience of perceiving the property as known as P, it says to be that as sensed P-ly. So I need to highlight a few distinctions between sense-datum theory and adverbial theory. First, sense-datum theory takes into account an additional well of perception between the mind and the world. Sense-datum plays the role of intruder between the perceivers and the mind-independent object. So it becomes problematic when we realize that the thing we perceived is what we take ourselves to be observing. In contrast, the adverbial theory emphasizes that our perception is directly affected when we see the object by employing adverbial modifications of the perceptual verbs. So the second difference between sense-datum theory and adverbial theory is sense-datum theory disputes its idea of the phenomena principle. The phenomena principle states that when an object with a particular sensible quality appears in front of a perceiver, there is something in that object the perceiver should be aware of, that such an object possesses that sensible quality. In short, the phenomena principle puts emphasis on the conscious aspect of a perceptual experience. The adverbial theory, by contrast, avoids this debate by shifting the focus away from what it is like to have the experience of the bent pencil. Instead, the focus is on not what we sense, but how we sense. So in the previous slide for the adverbial theory, I gave the example of visual illusion. So in the figure I put on the right of the screen. So for sense-datum theory, regardless of what reality is, if a pencil appears bent to me, then it could be expressed as I'm aware of a bent pencil, or there is a bent pencil in reality. However, adverbialists will say, no, of course, there's no bent pencil in reality, but it's just because I sense pencil bently. So based on this example, it seems much clearer for a person to see why sense-datum theory is not as better as the adverbialism view, because by showing the illusion of sensing a bent pencil, we know in fact there is no bent pencil in reality, right? And this is also why adverbialism could have some improvement based on sense-datum theory. For adverbialism, for adverbialism view, it suggests that the perceiver is directly aware of a particular type of mental state or occurrence, but it does not necessarily imply that the mental state actually possesses the properties that appear to the perceiver. In other words, any sensible quality appearing to a perceiver might not always indicate that there is actually such sensible quality. In this case, it seems more plausible for the adverbialist to deny that there is such kind of thing called sense data. Now, let's jump into some discussions about many properties problem. In short, the many property problem appears when the perceptual contents with different objects all possessing more than one major property, such as shape or color, such as the figure showed below, that there is a blue triangle, a right square, and also a right triangle and a blue square. In this case, why the adverbial translation might fail. So for an adverbialist, intuitively, they will translate the figure for a blue triangle right square by saying, I sensed rightly, triangly, bluely, squarely. However, the problem you will see the problem because it's really hard to distinguish between the figure on the left and the figure on the right. Here I'm going to present two solutions. The first one, I try to revise the original translation by saying that I sensed triangly, bluely, leftly, and squarely, rightly. So this, for the revised translation, I try to use the adverb leftly and rightly in order to indicate the position or the relationship between the position. I try to highlight the position between the relationship between the blue triangle and the right square, because there is a blue a blue triangle on the left and there is a red square on the right. So similarly, there could also be a revised translation for the figure on the right. It could be I sensed triangly rightly leftly and squarely bluely rightly. Or I could say I sensed triangly rightly next to squarely bluely. However, there is a potential problem in this solution, because it makes no difference if it change the order of the adverbs, given that triangly bluely leftly, squarely rightly is nearly the same as triangly rightly leftly, squarely bluely rightly, except the order of these adverbs. So here comes to my second solution. The second solution, so for the second solution, it was firstly proposed by Michael Tai in his paper, The Adverbial Approach to Visual Experience. So here I make a little bit change based on his original solution. So originally, Michael Tai, he tries to bind some properties together and to put one object with its many properties into one bound and put the other one with its many properties into the other bound. So his revised translation here is I sensed blue dash triangly right dash squarely. So he used a dash and they put it between blue and triangly, and also put the other dash between right and squarely. So we could avoid, so by using this translation, we could avoid the situation on the left being confused with the right triangle and the blue square situation on the right. However, I realized there is still potential problem in the second solution, because if I describe a situation as, you could see, so as right squarely or rightly squarely, and ask someone to draw it, then it will end up with two possibilities. The first possibility is a square filled with color red. And the second possibility is an unfilled square with red borderline only. So with respect to this potential problem, I gave a possible improvement on this solution. So here I changed the translation rule of the adverbial theory. Instead of making color as adverbs, I changed colors into the form of passive verbs, and only shapes are qualified as adverbs. So I will translate the figure, the original figure, blue triangle, red square, into my sense is blue triangly and righted squarely. I mean, this sounds a little bit weird, and also I find it also has problem, because by modifying the translation rule in this way, I automatically use blueness to qualify the shape of triangle and use redness to qualify the square shape. If so, this seems to not obey the adverbialist primary purpose in doing the adverbial translation, given that there is no preferred order between perceiving colors or perceiving shapes. Here comes more limitations in the adverbialism view. So I was inspired by the limitations in the translation rule that I made based on the second solution. So I gave a case that there are two perceptual events only involved in shape. So you could see the figure on the right. Both figures contain a square and circle, and both square and circle appear simultaneously in each perceptual event. However, the difference is for the figure 3.1, the circle is in the square, but for figure 3.2, the square is in the circle. So in these two perceptual events, by applying the adverbial theory, it seems like my first solutions is more plausible, because for figure 3.1, I could say I sensed circly inside or in squarely. And for figure 3.2, I could say I sense squarely inside or in circly. But this also leads to the main weakness in the adverbial theory, because the adverbial theory ignores an essential part of human perception, attention. Now, let me stop sharing. Yeah, hopefully you can see me again. So what I did is I changed the figure 3.1 and I changed the outer contour a little bit and make it become figure 4.1. And also I change, and I also make another change for on the figure 3.1 and change its outer contour, and it becomes figure 4.2. And I asked people to report on what they saw first when there is a difference between the outer contour figure 4.1 and 4.2. So basically, figure 4.1 has an outer shape of a circle, and figure 4.2 has an outer shape of square. So after I made these changes, I asked 114 participants to report the first shape they saw at their first glimpse. And for figure 4.1, with the outer shape of a circle, 86% of participants report that they see the circle first. I mean, they see the inner circle first by giving them an outer contour of a circle. And for figure 4.2, 87.7% of participants report that they see the square first, because the outer contour is square. It makes them to see the image of the. It makes them see the shape square in the image first. So here is the results. Personal speaking, I'm not that surprised by just seeing this result, because I think different perceivers' reaction to the same picture are different due to their interpersonal differences in selective attention. As I mentioned before, that actually no matter for 4.1 or 4.2, these two figures, they are exactly the same figure, but I simply change the outer contour. For the figure 4.1, I change it into a circle. I make the outer contour to be a circle, and for figure 4.2, I make the outer contour to be a square. However, this seems influence their selective attention, and it also seems impossible for a adverbialist to overcome such limitation on utilizing qualification in the adverbial theory. The pressing issue here is how could the adverbialist deal with the differences and unintentional preferences in perceivers' attention? So in conclusion, I begin by introducing the adverbialism view by comparing and contrasting the adverbial theory and the sense-datum theory. I also addressed the many property problem and pointed out the potential problem of the adverbial theory. I elicited two possible approaches in solving the many property problem, but also I single out all other issues which remain unsolved owing to some limitations of the adverbialism view. To some extent, the adverbialism view could be defended by claiming that it provides some possible improvement over the sense-datum theory. However, in some cases, it's worthwhile to pay attention to the significant disadvantage in the adverbial theory, given that we take into consideration one of the crucial factors in perception, selective attention. After all, it's impossible to generalize that when people encounter the exact same perceptual event, how their attention might lead them to perceive which specific property first. Hence, there is still something that the adverbialists need to ponder over, and they shall try to break through these limitations in the adverbial theory throughout future discussions. So here are our list of references and acknowledgements. And again, I'm so glad that my paper is selected and I could get an opportunity to present my views in this video presentation. So for more details related to the content of the presentation, please read my paper. Also, please feel free to leave some comments or any criticism. I'm looking forward to discussing any topics or related issues about adverbialism. And thanks again for watching my video. Bye.